Uh, I think you all are aware about the Professor Samanti's mother's funeral. Are you?
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so shall we just I will share the document. In fact, last week I have put Ministry of Finance annual report. I recommend you to just go through it. Go through means not to read it, just to look at it, especially the last two chapters of that annual report. Last three chapters, I think very important. You just go through it. Okay, we stop at. We were discussing about really public sector accounting and finance. The introduction part of the session. So we stop at users of public sector financial information. That means users and the what do you call their needs. uh, when you look at this public sector, one one important factor is that I would say some people spend money. Really, some people spend others' money. That is the story about public sector. Some people spend others' money. As citizens of any economy, any country, what we'll do is by using in a democratic environment, we really vote for people. They will really appoint as MPs, members of parliament, and we expect them to really represent us. They represent the public. So we are delegating our power to them. Really, they will take decisions on spending. They will take decision on fiscal policies. So thereby, you will see now there is in corporate finance you might learn about agency relationship. So you will see the agent and principal. We are the principal. On behalf of us, the elected people will really act. The thing is that the environment is not simple like a company. There are macroeconomic variables, economic factors, political factors, different cultures, etc. So thereby managing this particular entity, the country, is a complex I would say situation. So in this context, we are discussing the public sector accounting and finance. Just coming back to the types of information produced by public sector organization, we discussed this part last week. You will see there are 5 types of information: statutory information, financial information, planning information, budgetary information, control information. When you read the Ministry of Finance report, just try to find out those what are statutory, what are financial information, what are planning information, what are budgetary information, what are control information. Control information means you will have the budgeted figures and the actuals. So then only you can control. You get a feedback. For example, last year, if you are providing, say, 2019 annual report, that means that particular year already gone. So you will get a economic or the matters review chapter. Reviewing chapter, of course, provide qualitative control information. So likewise, throughout the particular annual report, you will get this kind of information. I think better when you go through the annual report, just think about these type of information: statutory, financial, planning, budgetary, control. Of course, some informations combined. We can't just exactly put certain information into only control information, only budgetary information. There may be a combination type of information. So I think as a homework, if you do this, you will get a very good understanding about the introduction. So coming back to where we stopped, we know this part, this column you get the users, this column you get the information needs. Donor community. Donor community means the people who are really donating, not only the financial assistance but also technical assistance. We get in addition to financial aids, financial loans. In certain cases, we get technical assistance. For example, maybe managerial know-how. Maybe in certain cases, say electricity story. So there may be technical matters. When you talk about the water, so you might get technical assistance. When you talk about the education, you may get technical assistance, etc. In health matters also, you may get the technical assistance in addition to financial assistance. So thereby, when they provide money or the technical assistance for us, they are just looking at whether we have achieved set targets, set objectives, plans, targets. Maybe those things they might consider as macro targets. For example, they might say, okay, the budget deficit should be 2.5% with compared to GDP or whatever. So likewise, you get inflation rate, country's economic growth rate. So those are macro uh, targets or the objectives. In addition to that, you might have the donors might set what do you call micro targets for a particular organization, for a particular agency. For example, if you take electricity board, they might talk about the number of connections, the volume of electricity generated, something like that. In education also, they might have certain targets in education field, especially for state university sectors. In water sector also, they might have targets. In health, they might have uh, targets like that. So thereby, they are just looking at whether those targets been achieved or not. If then they are really satisfied. Then the other one, media. Really, media is interested in financial information, other informations. Really, the degree of impact on the society. I think you can remember all these bond scam, bond issue in the country recent. Say any other issues, political issues. For example, recently COVID-19 rupees 5,000 distribution. So all those really matters. They are interested impact of those information, those matters, those events on all aspect of society. Then the economic planners, of course, they are of course interested in timely information, because they need timely information for planning purposes. As you aware, if you read that annual report, Ministry of Finance it says really financial statements of government department has to be really presented within 150 days of the balance sheet date, financial year end. I think you can remember that is 3 months for the public quoted companies. For this 150 days, so thereby within the particular time frame that information has to be provided. Then the taxpayers, of course, us, if you are paying tax, we should really we would like to know what has happened to our money, whether our tax payments or the collected tax being contributed to increase the living standard of the people, and also we would like to know what are the new tax policies, tax rates, increase or decrease, etc. Then the bankers and lenders to government, of course, you know that financial uh, money, really government will borrow money from public, not only the public, even from bankers and lenders. So thereby they are interested, the bankers and lenders are interested about ability to pay, that is liquidity. I think you can remember recent past, due to this COVID-19, the treasury, the what you call foreign currency bonds, I think went on negative prices, something like that. Their yield rate was almost 95%. So thereby they are interested in ability to really pay the money of the government. Then regulator bodies, whether the government spending meets legal requirement, whether the financial controls are adhered by spending agencies. Regulatory bodies means central bank, one example. Sri Lanka Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, another example. Consumer authority, I think, that particular commodity prices, where the institution who really monitor and regulate the commodity prices, I think as per the Consumer Act, Consumer Authority. So those people are really interested in whether the particular entity, whether the particular government entity is really meeting the prescribed compliances. I think in recent president's story blaming the central bank officers. So you know that when the particular regulatory body is not working with the guidelines, so there will be a issue. Then government economic and monitoring authorities, whether there is a deficit or surplus on current account, and whether borrow or mop up liquidity in the economy. Again, here it's coming under the monitoring institution like central bank. They are just thinking about the balance of a current account, whether it is a positive balance or negative balance. You know, our foreign currency, always current account balance is negative, budget deficit. So when there is such deficit, you know that we need to search for financing, suitable financing options, suitable financing strategies. Certain financial strategies, financing strategies we need to control the money supply. Certain financing strategies we use not to make any harm to the foreign exchange rate. Then the budget analysis and managerial accountant and investors, of course, the current trend of current monthly account historical cost to help predict the future financial and economic position of the economy. Budget, the analysis, like, you know, maybe consultant, maybe big audit firms, they are just looking at the current monthly accounts and budgets and the historical data, just to, you know, predict a future of the economy. Then the revenue and other related agencies and governments monitor financial position of government as a basis for structuring managerial employee reward systems such as bonus for staff, uh, salary revision commission, one example. Maybe individual organization like Inland Revenue Department. Inland Revenue Department may look at their collections to propose a new bonus scheme for them. Likewise, this particular area covers individual institution and different commissions appointed in respect of managing human resources. You know that in public sector, there is a set of human resources. So you need to manage human resources. I heard that, I know that there is one circular 2019 Ministry of Finance issued. If you get any professional membership, one professional membership, 1 year fee, that means the fees for the membership is reimbursed. But earlier we didn't have in the public sector. Public sector means not the here the public sector means here what I am referring to the departments. Here earlier government employees, that is those who are working in government departments, really if they have any membership, say there is a chartered accountant working in a Ministry of Education, but earlier he couldn't reimburse his, he couldn't get his membership reimbursed. Now it is in the present law, yes, he can get one membership fee reimbursed. So thereby, what I'm going to tell you here is certain human resource management units, organizations, commissions may need information about financial positions just to redesign or reformulate their human resource strategies. Then control and the accounts general, of course, they are interested in maintaining a management information system, capture in real time past, present, emerging development, behavior patterns of various government organizations. For example, if you are running, suppose tax department, in the tax department, Director General is interested in having a real time set of information. If we can just get the just put in the key, if we can get a report, the revenue collected as at today, revenue collected yesterday, revenue collected for the week, revenue collected last month, if we can get those information, I think number of taxpayers and number of taxpayers compliance, likewise if you can get those information, I think it's their interesting, it's their really need. Then the Auditor General, of course, Auditor General is, Auditor General is responsible for really investigating all the documents, all the accounts of public sector, and therefore he is interested in properly kept records and properly reported on. So he is interested on those recording aspects, say accounting aspect of government accounts. Then also, not only the Auditor General, just look at the trade unions. They also really need information, financial information, to be used in salary negotiations. So making certain proposals to put their salary increment. So they might consider this financial information. Contractors and suppliers of goods, are there enough money to pay for government contract? I think recent president's story, I think blaming, when blaming the central bank, the president highlighted that there are huge amount of money to pay for different service providers. I think you can remember that story. Maybe health service, maybe the POSES, there are bills, supplies we need to pay. So there are huge amount of areas. So thereby contractors and suppliers of goods, if they think that government is not making our payment on due dates, so they just really delay the supply. They just say that sorry, we don't have the items. So thereby it's a barrier for us to continue the smooth flow of economic process in the country. If there is information that there is government is having no money such information is important for the contractors of suppliers of goods with regard to public sector. Then the non-governmental organization, NGOs. NGOs, of course, they interfere with social or economic interventions. When there is a social community requirement, uh, non-government organization may interfere. For example, අපි කියන්නේ රතු කුරුස. උදාහරණයක් වශයෙන්, when you take one example, just to distribute the spectacles among the elderly people. So likewise, they want to know key areas the state that require social and economic interventions. So the සමාජීය සේවය, social service එක කරන්න ඕන major areas, if they can identify, they can really they can interfere if low amount of money really allocated. For example, just to really provide the welfare facilities to the elderly people, then they will understand that that information provided, oh, there is a gap, there is a vacuum, there is an opportunity for us to go and there to this to serve the particular segment. This World Bank, we call it supranational. World Bank, IMF, what they call ADB, all these donor agencies, all these donor organizations we call supranational, and multilateral bilateral agencies and foreign governments want to know financial and economic performance of country, where to assist, where to advise. They want to assess the effectiveness of spending of HIP, means high index poverty countries, high index poverty countries, poverty alleviation, sustainability, fiscal policies, net debt, contingent claim against government, and obligation for government pension. Really, this World Bank, IMF will tend to look at really negative, I would say, negative outcome of the country. For example, what is the poverty line, poverty rate, any sustainability of fiscal policies, what is the debt or debt service ratio, net wealth, likewise. Then the private sector business also, with interested in public sector information, whether government borrowing from the commercial banks would affect their business and whether they can do business with the government. So private sector also looking at opportunities for really, doing businesses with government. I think you might heard about public-private partnership. Public-private partnership. I think recent this they call the avant-garde story. I think they have entered into an agreement now with the government to provide services for ships again. So it's a kind of public-private partnership. So thereby, private sector business also may look at doing businesses jointly. In certain cases, land may provide by the government. The cultivation or the factory may start by the investment in factory, building factories, starting businesses may really ventured by private sector business. So thereby, it's that can be considered as a private-public partnership. So thereby, private sector businesses also, businessmen also, private sector investors also interested in doing businesses with government. So thereby, they are just looking at the policies in certain sectors, in certain businesses. Government will encourage this kind of public-private partnership. For example, plantation sector, environmental management, waste management in the country. So those kind of if you look at the national policies of waste management, they provide information about whether there is opportunity, where there is an opportunity for private sector people to link with public sector organizations. So with that, I think I have explained the users need information needs. Now you will realize when you look at these stakeholders, users, they have multiple, I would say, different, diverse needs. So thereby satisfying those people requirement is not, I would say, easy. It's a challenging task. Challenging task. Right. Then we'll come to the concept of privatization. As I told you, the concept of privatization is little outdated, little I would say expired concept. But just to understand what it is, I would discuss very briefly the policy objective of privatization. One objective may to raise foreign exchange. You know the meaning of privatization. Privatization means converting government organization into private-led, private capital provide organization. So thereby the ownership will transfer from public sector to private sector. Raise foreign exchange. So when you can sell the financial net worth, you can raise foreign exchange. We call it foreign direct investment. Then to develop a domestic capital market, it is important to really in the this capitalism model, in this liberalization model, neoliberalization model, I think you can understand the capital market mechanism, open economy, where people requirement needs being addressed based on the demand and supply mechanism. So when there is a supply mechanism, we know we have the commodity market. So you can talk about the commodity market. If you take a yogurt, there is a particular price, supply and demand. If you take any commodity, there is a market price. Likewise, if you go to the labor market, there is a price, labor market. If you need labor, you go to the labor market. I think it's very clear. If you need a commodity, you go to the commodity market. If you need labor, you go to the labor market. In the labor market, there are different classification of labor, maybe skill, unskilled, professionals. You might have different classification of laborers. Likewise, when an investor needs money, where he really or she or the particular organization really goes, the investors really go to the capital market when they need money. So thereby it is the government responsibility to develop a capital market. So we mean the domestic capital market. Here maybe Colombo Stock Exchange, maybe the debt market, bond market, treasury bill market, example. So thereby, if you have very good, if you do the privatization, what happens is you encourage the competition. When you encourage the competition, automatically you will get the what do you call capital market development. Then to motivate the private sector, when of course you do the capital privatization, you encourage private sector, uh, to enter, to invest. So thereby, if you want to motivate private sector, we use privatization of government institution just to encourage private sector. For classic example is telecommunication industry. Okay. Then the reduce the fiscal deficit. When government is really maintaining certain organizations, they need to really look after that. So thereby, government budgets will have more overheads. So thereby, just to, if you can transfer this particular set of organizations to the private sector, you can save the cost, maintenance cost and other costs. So thereby, it will reduce the budget or the fiscal deficit. To improve the efficiency of economy by encouraging private sector participation and investment, to improve the efficiency and economy, that means low price, providing the same unit at a low price. So that is just to encourage the private sector. You can ensure the efficiency. Then, of course, the government must not engage in commercial activities. There was an argument in 1980s where public sector is really inefficient. Private sector is more efficient than public sector. There was a really a slogan in 1980s. So thereby, government must not engage in commercial activities. So thereby, government is not in a capacity to undertake commercial activities. So thereby, we have to privatize. Then the advantages of privatization. Privatization lead to lower price and greater supply. When you give the mechanism to the private sector, there is a possibility of lowering price because of high degree of competition, and also greater supply. Let's say example is, as I told you, telecommunication. About 20 years back, I think we were in the waiting list to get a telephone. We were in the waiting list to get a telephone list. The supply was limited. So once you privatize, so other investors are entered into the industry. So thereby there is a competition. So competition end up with lowering prices and greater supply. Another advantage, it provides a one-off cash boost for government to use in other areas like schools and hospitals. Now this is like I think you can heard about sale and lease back. Have you heard about sales and lease back? Sale and lease back means, the earlier you have the you had your building or property. What you do is you sell the building to a other party. Then and there, at the same time, you will lease it back. So in such situation, what happen is you will get a huge cash flow, a lump sum, huge cash flow. So thereby it's the answer for your liquidity problem. But you can use the building when you entered into the leasing agreement and you are making the installment. So thereby you will get a cash boost. So likewise, when government really sell, for example, insurance company, Sri Lanka Insurance, or maybe Sri Lanka Telecom earlier at that time, when you think about when they sell that, you will get a big cash. We call it cash boost. So that will enable, you can put that money in other most priority sectors, like to develop schools, to develop hospital, to develop health sector, to provide more welfare facilities, maybe for pregnant women, maybe just to provide welfare for elderly people. Likewise, you may think about, you may use those money to improve the other needy prioritized sectors. The government cannot be a player and empire. ආණ්ඩුව මේ දෙකම කරන්න බෑ. ඒකයි මේ කතාව. Play and the empire. Then the private enterprise is more responsive to customer complaints and innovations. When private sector entities, of course, they are more, when there is a more competition, you are just looking after the customer. Customer is the king. So thereby you always listen to the customer, and you will get feedback from customers, customer complaint. And also based on that, you try to make innovation. Then the competition in privatization increase differentiation. When there is a privatization, when you make what do you call this, privatization of government sector organization, there is a tendency of increasing the competition. When you increase the competition, there is a possibility of differentiating product. Now, can you remember the gas? They produce a small domestic gas cylinder for household, just for the transport and etc. So thereby, competition in privatization increase differentiation. So thereby, you try to differentiate your product from the other by using, I think, creativity and innovation. Then the privatization places the risk in the hand of business or private enterprises, save taxpayers money. Of course, so government can save money of taxpayers, and they can use those money for some other purposes. Disadvantages, of course, it is expensive and generate a lot of income in fees for specialist advisors, example banks. It is expensive and generate a lot of income in fees for specialist advisors. So you need, when you do the privatization, you have to do the valuation, maybe valuation of property. Well, if there is a particular land, you have to value it. You have to get the consultancy. You have to get the bank expertise, etc. So thereby, you will end up with, I would say, selling expenses, more disposal expenses, professional fees, lawyers fees, etc., accountant fees, consultant fees. Then the public monopolies have been turned into private monopolies with too little competition, so consumers suffer. If you couldn't really, as it is, I explained, if you couldn't get if you couldn't get realize the expected advantages of privatization, you yourself create a monopoly situation. A simple example is the gas, petroleum, we allowed IOU, Indian Oil Company, IOC to come in, but monopoly situation. Then the nationalized industries were sold off too quickly and too cheaply. Adu milata, kunu kollata, we can classic example is Sri Lanka Insurance Company. I think there is a rumor going on. This is not related to the public sector, but the finance. Some rumor is going on that the finance is really just trying to buy one particular investor at a low price. That's why they have really closed down as per the central bank guidelines. Then after purchase, the buyer have sold off or closed down unprofitable parts of the business, transport. After purchase, the buyer have sold. Make a gattara say when private sector people may buy, but once that particular investor purchase, if it is unprofitable, again he might sell it. So thereby expected results cannot be achieved. It creates unemployment, layoff after purchase really. When private sector really purchase, when privatize, the new managing team will really look after cutting off overheads, so thereby unemployment issue. So that may be a national or social issue. Share ownership did not really happen as many small investors took their profit and did not buy anything else. Then we will comparison between government accounting and private sector accounting. The main objective of commercial enterprise is to maximize profit. What of government is to provide advocate welfare to the people at the reasonable cost. Now, when you know that when you say commercial enterprises, our objective is to maximize wealth or the maximize profit. But when you say the government sector, our objectives, government objective is to, welfare to the people at a reasonable cost. Government revenue is derived from the public in the form of taxation, fines, fees, whereas business concerns obtain their income principally from the sale of goods and services. I think you can they understand the government source of income is taxation, fines, fees, whereas the public sector, private sector income source is sales of goods and services. In government, financial transactions are recorded on cash basis, while the commercial organization is on accrual basis. I think this point is very important. When you look at the private sector, they just accounts for accrual basis. But public sector, they keep or they record the counts, financial transaction based on cash basis. The difference between the cash basis and accrual basis is that when you prepare the accrual basis, you have the balance sheet. When you prepare the cash basis financial statement, you don't have a balance sheet. But you have to remember, under the public sector reforms, new public management, even Sri Lankan government now trying to adopt accrual basis instead of cash basis. If you go to our annual report, Ministry of Finance annual report, you will see they have prepared a balance sheet. Meaning is that they have adopted accrual basis. It's really not the full accrual. We call it modified accrual basis. Certain assets, they are not recognized based on accrual. So thereby, recent, I think in Sri Lanka, this accrual basis started in 2012. So accrual basis. Now, Ministry of Finance and certain public sector, especially the departments, ministries and urban councils, they are trying to adopt accrual basis. So there are, we call it IPSAS, International Public Sector Accounting Standards. Up to now, there are 20 standards in Sri Lanka. That is being issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountant with collaboration of Ministry of Finance. So thereby, government, public sector also now moving towards accrual basis. In public sector accounting, tangible fixtures such as land, building, plant, machinery are not shown in the balance sheet, whereas private sector account. So of course, I told you that with the accrual base adaptation of public sector, now the land and buildings are in the balance sheet of public sector financial reporting. But remember, there is a type of assets called heritage, like forest, sea. Those assets are very difficult to quantify, very difficult to measure in financial terms. So thereby, those assets are not in the balance sheet of the public sector financial statements. Then in public sector accounting, current assets such as stocks and debtors are not shown. Now, of course, with the accrual accounting, you have to remember it is shown, but when you follow the cash basis, it's not reflected in the balance sheet. In government, there is no annual general meeting of stakeholders, unlike the situation with commercial enterprise. With what government does it called public briefing on specific issues. There is no such annual general meeting in government sector, but instead of that, what government does is to hold a public briefing on specific issues, but it doesn't say that government organizations are not responsible for reporting. They have to report. For example, they have to report they have to present the financial statement to the General, then the Parliament, COPA, Committee on Public Accounts, and Committee on Public Enterprises. There is a mechanism, but there is no annual general meeting for the stakeholders. In public sector accounting, what operates substantially is fund accounting. However, in private sector, proprietary approach is adopted. Now here we have substantially fund accounting, consolidated funds, special funds, donation funds, different funds are there. But in private sector, we call it as, you know, stated capital or the and the reserve equity. Public sector accounting thrives rigidly on the budgetary approach, whereas the private sector account budgeting is embraced as a very potent control instrument. Now, for example, uh, I don't agree with this differentiation. Uh, Budgetary is important, both aspect, but if you look at the public sector, budgetary is much more, you know, rigid approach, whereas in public sector, it budgetary is being used as a, you know, a control mechanism, controlling tool, control instrument. So in private sector, I think you can remember, if you learn the management accounting, you study the responsibility centers, maybe the profit center, maybe the cost center, maybe the investment centers. The particular CEO or the divisional head is responsible for their work, for their decision. So thereby, people in the private sector try to really try to make responsible for their work. So thereby, budgeting techniques is a control tool in the private sector. But I'm not going to say that it is, if you can implement the budgetary approach in an effective manner, even it is a controlling instrument in the public sector, no problem. But in the most of the cases, especially in developing countries, this budgetary approach is much more poor and rigidly, and or thrives rigidly, just incrementally, just to get the political advantages. Politician or the ministers or the executive of the country produce the budget just to get the political advantage. Okay, that's about advantages of the difference between government accounting and private sector accounting. So far, what we did was we just look at the users of you know, public sector information, stakeholders. Then we discuss the privatization concept. They are the logic behind privatization, advantages and disadvantages, and also we discuss what we call the differences between uh, government accounting or the public accounting or the private sector accounting. I hope it's clear for you. Uh, uh, so I think how many are there in the right? Any questions so far? Bahai hatta. Eight. Any questions? Okay. If you have any question, you can raise. Am I too fast? No answer. So you have to give your feedback. At least, please uh, just put a, you know, a comment on me. මොකද මෙහෙම කරනකොට මගේ පොඩි ගතියක් තියෙන, මං හිතන්නේ පොඩ්ඩක් මම මේකෙන් කරගෙන යනවා. ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් කන්ට්‍රෝල් කරගන්න ඕන. ඕගොල්ලන් ෆීඩ්බැක් එක ආවොත් හොඳයි, නැත්නම් ඉතින්. Okay, good. We will continue then. Then that is about the basic introduction for the public sector accounting. But I just want to incorporate a particular topic. The uh, other part of the subject, that is the finance aspect, because our subject is financial public sector accounting and finance. So I just thought of introducing the that part also. uh, New public management. uh, New public management I will discuss with you, and then I will come to the public financial management, that is public finance. uh, is new public management just another management fad or fashion, another things promising everything? So what I'm trying to raise by this question is uh, to raise the question, is it like a balance scorecard? Is it like some other management technique? Maybe some, say, strategic management, maybe participatory management, management by wandering. The management fad, it's kind of another tool, another technique, another passion uh, thing promising everything. So when you adopt the new public management, can we really ensure the efficiency and effectiveness economy of the public sector? Can we just eradicate all the corruptions, zero corruptions, zero misuse of assets, something like that? Things, thing promising everything. Another thing promising everything. Okay. New public management is nothing more than set of almost every management tool found to be suitable for the public sector. So new public management basically meaning is that it's an approach, new approach managing public sector according to the context. According to the context, depending on the context, the management approach should be really match. So NPV is the practical results of the 1980s normative ideas of private is better than public. As I told you, all these jargons, privatization, peopleization, new public management, really arose really in 1980s, emerged in 1980s. In 1980s, there was a statement called, as I told you earlier, private sector is better than public sector. Private sector is more efficient than public sector. Private sector is more effective than public sector. So thereby, this particular jargon, we call it normative idea. Normative meaning of normative idea means without testing, without empirical evidence, you are making a statement that uh, you are just giving a prescription, you are just giving your opinion, but you don't have hypothetical empirical evidence, empirical data prove that for example, private sector is better than public sector. That's called normative idea. When you say normative idea, you just give prescriptions. For example, when you look at the accounting standards, those are normative prescriptions. And you will realize that under COVID-19 pandemic situation, certain accounting standards, certain auditing standard has had to be changed, and they issue certain circulars, certain really amendments, certain guidelines issued for the next year. So thereby, when you say normative idea is having lack of empirical evidence. Just like a slogan, market. ඒක කරගෙන යනවා. එහෙම එකක් කියාගෙන යනවා. So in 1980s, private sector is better than. This was really this particular theme was started from England, Margaret Thatcher. Just to they thought of in England they thought of reducing welfare expenses in the country. So they came up with a new idea. privatization, new public management, peopleization, etc. Idea was that instrument used in the private sector must be successful in the public sector. මේකේ සරලම කතාව තමයි, since private sector is better than public sector, new public management is really encouraging private sector practices in the public sector. Idea was that instrument used in private sector must be successful in public sector. Even that is a normative idea. And the opponents of the past as well as those of today's usually evaluate any change in public sector with a highly normative, idealistic view of public sector. You know the meaning of normative. NPM is by far more than management system, performance measurements. Excessive customer orientation also raise concern about democratic accountability and control. So thereby here, what we will do is under new public management, we are just encouraging private sector practices into the public sector organization. Classic example is strategic planning. If you go to any public sector organization, they have the strategic plan or sometimes corporate plan. They are talking about strategies. They are trying to really measure the results. Performance measurement systems are there. All those jargons being really practiced in the private sector. So thereby we are just trying to adopt private sector practices in the public sector organization. That adaptation, that change is called new public management. So thereby I think you can understand the meaning of new public management, the concept. There are many articles under new public management. If you read, just Google it, you can find out new public management article. Plenty of articles, an array of articles available on Google. Then the public financial management and reforms. When you look at the public financial management, now when you say new public management, it is a kind of reform, change, right? So when what we'll do is in these slides we will look at the public financial management and reform. A narrowest definition confines public financial management to the downstream activities of budget execution, control, accounting, reporting, monitoring, and evaluation. That is Allen et al. 2004, the narrowest definition. They say that activities of budget execution, you know, the government sector budget in control, the accounting matters, that is really the reporting and monitoring and evaluation. So that is public financial management. But Rosen in 2002, PM has the taxing, public financial management has the taxing, spending, debt management of government, which influence resource allocation and income distribution. Now, Rosen 2002 is telling that public financial management is taxing, spending, and debt management of government. So you know it's really revenue management, expenditure management, debt management. Three aspects is done. The spending portion covers the budget cycle. So in the first definition we talk about the budget. So budget aspect is covered in the second definition under the spending part. The spending portion covers the budget cycle, includes budget preparation, internal controls, accounting, internal and external audit, procurements, and monitoring and reporting arrangements. So those are the aspect of 2002 Rosen. So yeah, that is little bit broader. Just look at the 2006 Witt and Muller, includes oversight and control as well as intergovernmental fiscal relations. Intergovernmental not only the really the macro level institution like Ministry of Finance, Treasury, and the Parliament, but other line ministries, then the regional government departments, municipalities, etc. All those relations. So thereby, you will realize this public financial management is little bit complicated. There are many players in the public financial management. You have the top level, that is ministry level. Ministry level means finance ministry, treasury, and what do you call parliament. They just, of course, allocate money. They allocate money. Then money is spent by line ministries. Next level. So the top level giving resources, that is money, allocate money. Second level spend, but benefits going to the third level, public, citizens. So thereby this public financial management is, complex, not simple. Why? First level giving the money, second level spending, third level will get the benefit. So as well as intergovernmental fiscal relations. So thereby there is a requirement for us to coordinate all these all these government organizations. So I just draw a picture to indicate what public financial management is. You have the national policy, subnational policy process. That means national policy, 4 entities, ministry level, Ministry of Finance, Treasury, and the Parliament. Subnational policy process means down level, maybe the line ministries, maybe the provincial councils, Palas Sabha, and municipalities. The subnational process. Always, you will see in this diagram, there are two stages, two level, national policy processes and subnational policy processes. And each box you will see national and subnational. Each box you will get national. Here it has to be, of course, subnational. I'm sorry. Yeah? This box it has to be subnational budget preparation. So anyway, each box has two components. That is first step I just want to highlight. And also you will see there are three what do you call circles with different colors. So this color indicates co-entities, and this color indicates spending entities. This color indicates civil society and donor entities. Civil society means public, different maybe NGOs, different formal and informal organizations, media, academic, researchers. All these are civil society and donor entities. You know who are the donor entities. And national policy and process. Then it's linked to the national strategic budgeting. I will explain later on what is this link. I just want to highlight the key elements. National policy process, of course, policy processes, strategic budgeting, then budget preparation, then resource management. It has both two elements, as I told you, national and subnational, and also internal controls, audit and monitoring, internal controls and audit monitoring, accounting and reporting, and external audit and accountability. So what I want to communicate to you is that public financial management consists of basically these, I would say, Sixth element. This is little out of the public financial management, but policy has to be linked with the budgeting. Policy has to be linked with the budgeting. But when you say public financial management, the process include strategic budgeting, budget preparation, resource management, controls, internal controls, audit and monitoring, then accounting and reporting, finally external audit and accountability. So with that, what I will do is I will stop the lecture. We will see the results of the faculty board tomorrow, whether really this your academic sessions will continue, or they will announce the exam in July. I'm sorry, if that I don't know. So we will continue the uh, rest part, the balance, of course. Next week, if the faculty is taking a decision to continue the academic session for the final year second semester. So any question? If there is no any question, I will really wind up. Thank you very much for participating. This time I have to. I will upload the recording also if you need. Give me little time. I have to attend to the funeral also just now. So thereby, any question?
Excuse me, sir. We
Yes,
were
yeah.
told yeah, the exam will start on the 13th, July 13th.
Yeah,
So
not yet final. You were informed in written.
yes, it's there on the LM.
Ah, right. Then I
The
will
exam.
put a message in the. Are there any other information in the letter?
No, sir. On the exam site, it says exams will start on the 13th of July, and
Right,
that's all.
right. We will see the tomorrow faculty board the decisions. I will just inform you in LMS if any new informations, important information. I will just put to the LMS. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.